which makes me very excited. So first of all, big thanks for the partners and sponsors who helped us, Agile Lithuania volunteers, to make this event happen, the 13th Agile Tour, Vilnius, or Lithuania. So first of all, big thanks to Agile Coach. I hope you had a chance and you used the chance to get into the free consulting. They had an Agile clinic there. If not, we're going to still have a networking event after the closing keynote. So use the chance that if you haven't used it yet. Also, a company called Aboard. They are providing a powerful OKR management plugin for Jira, for those who use Jira, and the Salesforce. And in general, I think they, just because they produce the software for OKRs, they should be some sort of experts in the area. So if you are using OKRs and you need an advice, maybe you want to reach out. Also, conference partners, Telesoftas, Present Connection, and Accenture. Accenture had a really interesting virtual tours and metaverse kind of exercise. Also gave away a lot of prizes. And also media partner, Dave Agency, friends and social partners. Thanks to all of them. And if you don't mind, a round of applause for those. Okay. We still have some prizes. So in a few minutes, Saule will pull 2 numbers for the menti.com here. 1 number will be for our closing keynote, Peter. So don't forget to give, there are no numbers now. I'm just like imagining. Minimum viable product. So yes, here she is. So 1 number will be to evaluate the day 1, like the overall conference. And for this evaluation and the feedback you're going to give, we have prizes. We're going to decide, or we're going to draw the prizes at the end after the keynote, okay? So this one is for the conference, and there will be another one for Peter, okay? Don't mix them up. If you leave your contact information, then you participate in the prizes draw, okay? As I said, the networking event will be just here. The prizes will be also after the keynote. And I guess we are good to get to the final part of the day 1, which is the closing keynote by Peter Stevens. Peter has been with us already last year. I don't remember if 2 years ago, just last year? Okay, last year. We were very pleased by the feedback we received after the last year, so we decided, hey, let's invite Peter again. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alignment, Peter Stevens is going to tell us what does it take to be an Agile executive. Peter, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. So first of all, I got a question for you guys. Okay, this is an analog question. Are you enjoying the conference? Can we have a round of applause for the organizers? Okay, okay. And by the way, it's perfectly okay if you mix up the numbers because I'm sure they're going to be great. So, so what I'd like to do is talk to you a bit about agility as a personal thing. But before I talk, I'd like to find out a little bit about who's in the room. Now, first of all, I'm really excited because there are a lot of people in the room, and this is cool. I mean, you know, there's the apéro at the evening and the networking, okay? And you're staying and you're here, so that's good. And it's my job to keep you awake. So what I'd like to do is I want to divide the world in 2 categories. You know, there are 2 kinds of people who can divide the world into 2 categories and those who can't. Okay, and I'm kind of not real sure which category I fit in. But let's start with, do you see yourself as a doer or a maker or a creator? Okay, you're in some way involved in the business of your company. Okay, the actual doing of the work. So if you were working at a restaurant, you might be a cook, you might be part of the service. If you're working in development, you might be writing code, you might be designing user interfaces. Okay, so you get the idea. We do the actual work. Okay, the other I'm going to call facilitators. In the broadest sense, people who hold the company together, people who lead, coordinate, monitor, or otherwise kind of catalyze people to get things done. Okay, so we got doers and we got facilitators. Okay, and I'm being careful not to use terms that we might actually use in the real world to kind of keep them neutral. So I'd like to invite everybody to stand up. Okay? So I have a hypothesis about who's going to sit down in the next step, and we'll see if I'm right about this or not. Okay? So what I'd like to invite you to do is, if you consider yourself to be a doer, kindly have a seat. If you're primarily a doer, okay. Now this is actually kind of interesting. What this is telling me is this is not a developers conference. Okay? This is an Agile coaches, a Scrum Masters, a product owners, a leaders conference, and that's really cool. So let's take a closer look at that. Oh, by the way, if it weren't for the doing, there'd be no companies. So the most important work in the room is actually being done by the people who just sat down. So let's give them a round of applause. Okay? So, if you consider yourself to be a team-level leader, okay, and I'd like to include Scrum Masters in that group. That is, you're basically, responsible for one team, a group of, I don't know, 6 to 10 people, something like that. If you're responsible for more than one team, and by the way, I count product owners not in this group because product owners always have two constituencies: the team they work with and the stakeholders who they're working for. So if you consider yourself to be a team-level leader, kindly sit down. Okay, so this is, I'm going to guess a quarter are doers and probably around a third are kind of team-level leaders. Now, basically what that means is the rest of you are what I would call multi-team leaders. Okay? Now, I could have asked about executives or a higher level management, but that would have been a very small number. And that might have violated psychological safety by having the 3 CEOs in the room still standing up. So we're just going to acknowledge that and invite the rest of you to sit down. Thank you very much. This is going to be a great group. A couple of you, in fact, I think most of you are going to feel touched or impacted or affected. Might get curious about what I'm going to talk about today. So. Excuse me. So I have a question for you. Question for you guys to discuss with each other, with your neighbor. Now, probably there's someone sitting to the left of you and someone sitting to the right of you. Probably one of those people you know fairly well. Okay? I'd like you to speak to the other one. Okay? Okay? And now, if you got to form a group of 3, that's okay too. And it's not the end of the world, but let's kind of prepare the networking. What I'd like to ask you to do is discuss for 3 minutes. Does your company value leadership from people in your role? Okay, and why do you think that? So I'm going to watch the clock for 3 minutes. When you see this red thing, that means the time box is up, and I'd like to come back and see what's being discussed. And I'm also going to ask the organizers to be ready with the microphone, so I'd like to hear from 1 or 2 people, or maybe 3 after we're talking. So on your mark, get set, go. Hey, you guys are good. Okay? First of all, you dove right into the discussion, and when the red light came up, you guys stopped. It's like driving on the street. You get a red light, what do? You stop. Awesome. So, what I'd like to do is, if you were saying your company does value leadership from people in your role, could you kindly hold up your hand? Okay, that's pretty good. If you think people don't value leadership from people in your role, okay, minority opinion. Given the way we're voting, there might be some psychological safety issues here. It's possible. What I'd like to do is there one person, for the people who said no, okay, does anyone would like to share why you think that? Okay, gentleman in the front.
They are caring more about the numbers, the
Okay.
earnings, and actually they do not put any effort to the workers, like creating the good environment. I don't know, think about communication, how they are communicating together there.
Okay.
You know?
So if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is you believe that your leadership or your company values the numbers more than the people, and
Exactly.
so you're kind of there expected to kind of do the job. By the way, were you a doer or were you a facilitator?
Facilitator.
Facilitator. Okay,
Yeah.
very interesting. Thank you, sir. So let's go from someone who said, yes, I think they do. Okay, anyone here? Most of you held up your hand, so everyone who said, yes, leadership is valued, hold up your hand, please. Okay, there's a woman kind of in the middle. Can we reach out to her? Oh, I'm sorry. I figured if you put up your hand this time around, only about 5 people did, so I do hope you were a volunteer. So why do you think people value leadership in your organization from people in your role?
From my experience, when I joined the company I work in, there was a very big difference. So first of all, there is no micromanagement. Like, no one is checking, and they are trusting you and your decisions and letting you work, and they give you in advance the trust that you will do your work good. So I think that's one of the things. And anytime you have ideas or even you approach things differently, it will not be questioned like you didn't do as we all do, but you choose your own way. So any ideas or new approaches or different, I don't know, ideas are accepted, thought, and valued. That's how I feel.
Okay. So what I heard is that the management in your company is not very heavy, that people generally trust you to do the right thing, and that also means there's a certain expectation that you will do the right thing, and that's where these leadership skills are needed. Did I understand that correctly? Okay, I see you nodding. Thank you. So I want to say I'm excited about agility. Agility is something I think is really cool. I got involved in agility in 1993, although I didn't know it at the time. I forgot about it. I rediscovered it in 2006 when I found out about Scrum. And for me, agility was finally a way of organizing people that makes sense. And you know what? I didn't have to do the estimates anymore, and that was even better, because they always caused me headaches. To me, agility means hope. Agility is looking for a better way. Agility is also a belief that there is a better way. Okay? And we're going to come back to the Agile Manifesto in a couple of minutes. What I would like to share is there are 2 things that I'm really excited about. We uploaded my book to Amazon 2 days ago, and it's going to be released on the 15th of November this year. Okay? There is nothing more waterfall than publishing a book. The other thing is I hear a lot of debate about the value of Scrum and the value of agility, and you know, I'm not sure it's represented in this conference, which is a good thing, but I hear a lot about what I'll call soul-crushing Scrum. Anyone felt like they've been doing soul-crushing Scrum? Well, I think there's a better way to do Scrum, And so I created a video kind of inspired by Henry Knieberg, what he did for product ownership. I'm trying to do for how the Scrum team works. And I'm going to be releasing that at the Regional Scrum Gathering, or premiering that at the Regional Scrum Gathering in Sri Lanka, which is a virtual conference which you can join. And I'm doing it together with Thierry Dulestre. It's an amazing artist, an amazing videographer, and I'm really excited about what's coming out. So I hope you'll check it out when the time comes. I think it's really cool that leadership is so highly valued, because I think as we move forward, leadership skills are going to be increasingly necessary and increasingly valued, and it's something that really everybody needs. And I actually have something of a contrary opinion, although this is not the first time that I've heard somebody say something on stage that I say, no, 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 this is not how I see it, but I guess that's normal in a conference. I do believe leadership skills are necessary. I do believe every one of us can be, and I think for a modern company needs to be, an agile leader. And so what I'd like to do, if you guys are in with it with me, I'd like to take the next 20, 25 minutes or so and explore what does it mean to be agile, what does it mean to be agile for an executive, and as an executive, why would you want to do that? So is everyone with me, or is it time to apply the law of 2 feet? Anyone, are we good? Okay, good. So, three things I want to talk about. The first is, what is agility? Because a lot of people talk about it, and a lot of people mean very different things. I'd like to kind of connect agility to leadership, okay, and see how agile things, when we talk about how to run our companies, can have a huge impact. And finally, show you a couple of examples where we see these patterns in real companies in real life. Now, maybe you took a moment to notice how I started our conversation today. Okay? I didn't say very much. Okay? I'd like to believe I spent for someone standing on stage, I think I spent a lot of time listening. Okay? I gave you the opportunity to talk to me. I gave you the opportunity to talk to each other. Okay? And this is actually a pattern which I believe is very consistent. Listen before you tell. Okay, so the next thing I did was shared a couple things that I wanted to do. Okay, and the essential by this whole process is caring about what the other person is saying. So it's kind of a simple rule, you could call it like a mantra. Listen before you talk, ask before you tell. Okay, and let the other person finish their thoughts. And what we're going to discover is that first of all, what we've done is the basics of agility. It's about learning from each other. It's about collaborating. It's about getting better than who we are. This process of listening, then talking, listen, then talk, this is dialogue. Okay? And dialogue is the basic skill of coaching. And I believe it's also a prerequisite for empathy. Empathy is this feeling, he's listening to me, and he cares about what I say. And I have the same feeling. You're listening to me, and you care about what I have to say. And this makes all kinds of interesting things possible. It's the basis of trust, and it can become the basis of alignment. Okay? The process of creating alignment is the process of listening to each other, identifying what we have in common, and using that as a basis, identifying consensus for moving forward. And I believe this is a hugely powerful principle, and I also believe it runs a bit contrary to some of the things I've heard today about culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can't change that. You are who you are because you do what you do. If you change what you do, you change who you are. And that's fractal and recursive. That is, it also applies to your organizations. So let's have a look at agility. I'd like to take a look at what's meant by agility. Probably not a surprise to the people in this room, but agility is not hype. Okay, it's real. For me, the proof is, when you look at how some of the largest organizations in the world think about how they interact with other large organizations in the world. They realize they need to be more responsive. Okay? And I was honored to be part of a group that created what's now known as the Agile Contract Manifesto, which is rethinking how organizations collaborate with each other. They need to be more agile in their collaboration. And of course, it's been in the management press. That officially makes it a real thing. I believe the first kind of article about agility was published in the Harvard Business Review back in 2016. 3 years later, the Wall Street Journal followed suit. And note the very management tone of their headline. Are you agile enough for agile management? Sounds scary, doesn't it? Am I good enough? This could be a problem. Now, we can have these theoretical discussions, but the reality on the ground is agility works, and it produces some amazing things. This is a infographic about the development of what's going to be the second stage of the SpaceX Starship system. And starting from literally a tank that could hold water, to a flying water tank, to a suborbital test, to a functioning suborbital, a successful suborbital test. That's basically one new iteration, one new version of the hardware, roughly once a month for about a year and a half. Okay? And at the end of that year and a half, the water tank went to a successful suborbital test, and they started working on the next big challenge, which is how to get government approvals to actually launch the rocket. So yes, it does work, it's real. So let's talk about what agility really is. And we've heard about a lot of frameworks. Okay, you're probably familiar with some of these, you're probably familiar with some of the methodologies. If you're new to this and you're thinking about running a company, there are a couple that you should probably know about. Okay, first and foremost, Scrum and Kanban. Scrum is a simple team-based framework for solving complex problems. Kanban is a simple framework for visualizing and optimizing the flow of work through your company. Oh, and personal agility is a simple dialogue-based framework to align what you do with what really matters. So let's take a look at a couple of definitions of agility. I'm going to look at two. One is kind of the bottom-up version. It comes from the Agile Manifesto. A group of software developers got together and said, managers, give us some space. It was actually a pretty radical document. Well, more or less grudgingly, the managers did give the developers the space, mostly because it works. And eventually we got to the point where they said, you got to be agile, you got to do agile, and that produced some problems of its own. So let's start with the bottom version, the Agile Manifesto. How many of you have read this document? Okay, how many of you have read the second page of this document? Ooh, okay, still very good. So I would encourage you to do it. So I'm going to take the first sentence of the first page and the first sentence of the second page. We're uncovering better ways of developing software. Now let's just forget the software part for a moment, because we're talking to managers and we got to talk about real stuff. So let's just say doing what we do, whatever that happens to be, by doing it and helping others to do it. Uncovering better ways is about learning. Okay? It's about there is no best practice, there's only the search for a better practice. Remember what I said about hope? It's also the belief that there's a better practice. Doing it and helping others to do it. Okay? Now notice, this was coming from the doers, and it's about collaboration. Okay? And ultimately, we're here to produce stuff, so let's get good at doing it. And finally, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer. Okay? It's about purpose. Okay? And we can forget about that part about the software, because that highest priority is still the same. Just software developers do it by delivering valuable software. Okay, and so if we're going to reduce agility to its essence, I think you can do it very nicely with these three words: learning, collaboration, and purpose. Okay, so we went looking for better ways to develop software. What happened? Well, the first problem that we had is we went to our managers and they asked us questions like, well, if you do pair programming, does that mean I'm going to get twice as much work out of the two of you? And the answer was, well, actually, we hope to write fewer lines of code. And they kind of said, no, this does not compute. Remember the guy with the funny hair? So, very often the best you could get was kind of benign indifference. Okay, guys, you can do whatever you want as long as it doesn't influence my bonus. God, I was hoping that was a joke. Okay? Now, that has its challenges, but it at least enabled us to go forward, and it enabled us to create a lot of proof that this actually works, which brought us to the second problem. Oh, wow, this Agile stuff is amazing. Go do it. Let's do it in the whole company. Okay, and so we get this great menu. And by the way, SAFe has the ultimate great menu of practices you could apply. Please go do all of them right away, starting next week, and we'll declare mission accomplished. Okay, and this produced a lot of reactions. But fundamentally, it was also saying this Agile stuff might be great for the company, but it doesn't really mean anything for me. It doesn't offer me anything. And you know what? They were right. Because particularly when we look at Scrum and Kanban, both of these are about teams producing stuff. Okay? And our leaders, they're not part of teams producing stuff. They might be responsible for teams producing stuff. They might be responsible for whole departments or divisions producing stuff, but they themselves are not in a team. And in fact, quite often, it's more like they're playing a game of tennis. Okay? And there are a couple of other people in the same round at like the quarterfinals, and they all want to get into the semifinals because they're going to earn twice as much money as the guys who lose. Okay? So they're not necessarily cooperating with each other. Okay, so this is, how shall I say, so what does agility mean for an executive? Okay, well, before we go to that question, what I want to do is summarize what I think the Agile frameworks have in common. The first of all, they have a clear sense of purpose. They have this concept of inspection, looking at the situation, and then adaption, making changes on that. Okay, in Scrum, we've got sprint review, sprint planning. In agility, we call this celebrate and choose. Okay? We have a concept of cadence, some elements more formal than others, but the idea is to do things at regular intervals. Okay? When I talk about Scrum, I talk about inspect and adapt at regular intervals, produce something of value at regular intervals. Okay? And then finally, and this is really something that's emerged since the Agile Manifesto. You know, the early versions of Scrum and XP, they didn't really have coaches the way they do now. The Scrum Master was someone who dealt with the bureaucracy in the organization. And then they thought, well, maybe he or she was a project manager or kind of a project manager. And only recently has the idea that the Scrum Master is really a coach for the organization emerged. And it's about dialogue. It's about encouraging constructive interactions. So how does this all apply to leadership? So let's take a look at the environment that our leaders are working in. Okay? And if I had to pick a metaphor, I would call it a small boat on a large ocean. Okay? You'll notice it's kind of stormy out there. There are waves out there. The waves are significant compared to the size of the ocean. So how many of these things were on your radar screen back in January of 2020? Okay? We had a pandemic. We're seeing conflict in Europe for the first time in, what, 60 years? That conflict is having side effects. It started out more virtual. Now we're seeing some physical things. So there's all kinds of, you know, uncertainty and reasons to worry and challenges. And of course, remember the customer? We still have customers out there, and we still have to delight the customers, and we still need to innovate for the customers. So, you know, all this is happening on top of what we're doing. Now, I've had some conversations with senior executives, you know, and we're talking, you know, C-level of big companies. What are they worried about? Well, one is they got to get stuff done. There is the business of the company that has to keep running. We have to keep the lights on. But despite all of these challenges, they need to be both resilient and responsive. Okay? So there's a fear that their organizations are not able to weather the storm. They need to stay relevant, which means they need to be able to innovate. What happens if they don't innovate? What happens if it takes them forever to innovate? Well, they lose relevance in the eyes of their customers. The big fear is some startup is going to come along, completely blindside them, and they can't move forward. And at the same time, they also need to stay active to new talent. And one of the interesting things about young talent is they're used to a world that moves much faster. They're much more at ease with all of the high tech that we have available to us. Now, of all of these things, I think getting things done is the easiest. We have processes to do that. Everything else is a complex problem. Okay, what's a complex problem? Well, the first thing is we don't know what the answer is. It's not knowable in advance. And in fact, we're not even sure if we're asking the right question. Okay, so let's talk about what could be causing these problems. And I think, well, there are lots of them, but I think there are three big ones that deserve our attention. So let's start with the alignment problem. Okay, we've been talking about how difficult it is to create alignment. Then we have the multitasking problem. Okay, anyone feel like they're working like crazy and not getting anything done? That's the multitasking problem. And finally, the challenge of leadership. Okay, and I was tempted to call this the leadership problem, but it's not that our leaders are a problem. It's that leadership and how we do it is challenged. Now, the alignment problem is not a new problem. I first heard about it when I was getting into Agile as a leadership thing back in 2012. And I found an article that I thought was kind of interesting. I went to look for it. I stumbled on it. I went to look for it. I couldn't find it. Forest for the trees problem. There were so many articles about the alignment problem. But what you see here, and this is back in 2012, less than 10% of all organizations are able to execute on their strategies successfully. Okay, now a couple years ago they were saying, oh, agile transformations are horrible. Only 20% of them are successful. I'm not quite sure what they meant by successful, but I thought back to this statistic and I thought, wow, we're twice as good as we were 10 years ago. So I'm not sure if it's good, but it's not bad. The multitasking problem. This is analysis paralysis. This is our inability to make decisions, our inability to get things done. This is one of the case studies from the book. They were up against the wall. Okay? Walter had recently taken his company out of the partnership to partners going their separate ways. And on the one hand, he wanted to step back, but on the other hand, they had profitability issues, which, by the way, he didn't really tell anyone about at the time. So he did what leaders do in a situation like this. They analyzed the problem, they came up with a list of measures, and they dedicated 10% of the capacity of their leadership team to solve the problem. And they went to work. Now, he gave them a time box of 2 years to solve the problem. And if they hadn't finished it in 2 years, he was going to, I don't know, pull the emergency brake and do something different. Although I'm not quite sure what the alternative was. So anyway, 2 years go by. How many of these objectives have they achieved? None. Okay? I discovered that's a slight exaggeration. They did actually come up with a new logo for the new company, which is good because they're a design company. Okay? But what killed the efforts here was what I call the multitasking problem. So this is you working on one task. Okay? What's nice about working on one task is you can focus 100% of your efforts on that one task. Well, if you split it in two, you divide your capacity. You go to 3, you divide it again. Okay? You go to 4, you're going like crazy, but you're not getting anything done. Now that's bad. Okay? But that's only half of the problem, because you've added a new task, which is deciding which task to work on. Okay? Now, the research suggests, and I'm not going to call this a fact, but I'm going to call this supported. Every time you add an additional task, you lose 20% of your total capacity. So in other words, if you're working on 2 things at once, okay, you and your stakeholders and whatever, you spend 20% of your capacity figuring out what to do. That means instead of having 80%, you've only got 40% of your capacity per task for those 2 tasks. By the time you get 5 things going at once, 3/4 of your capacity is spent figuring out what to do. Okay? This is not good for your performance. Okay? What this means is you need about 6 months to do what you could do in a week. Okay? And this accounts for a lot of the fear of big companies that a small company can just blow by them, because they have the potential to be so much more focused and so much more effective. Okay? And in fact, we see this happening in real life. Okay? NASA astronauts back in 2006 visiting SpaceX while they were working on the Falcon. They do in a few weeks what NASA does in a few years. Okay? So this is real. So what is the problem? Well, the ultimate problem, I think, is the leadership challenge. We have this idea, and if you look at how MBAs are trained, you go in, well, first of all, you learn to play tennis. You learn how the game is played. This is how a company is run, and that's the only way to do it. And you get good at solving problems. and you get good at getting other people to implement solving the problem. So, you know, the basic idea started probably with Taylor and Ford. Somebody comes up with a solution, gets lots of arms and legs to implement the solution. And that works for fairly simple tasks. Okay? Now, when we talk about command and control, people say, military leadership, how boring. How can they be so stupid? Turns out the military thinks about this a lot. They call this directive command and control. Stand up, left face, forward march, go. Okay? That works really well for simple tasks. It's very good for getting the soldiers from A to B, okay? As long as there are no problems along the way. Okay? And most importantly, as long as there is no resistance along the way. Okay? Now, what happens is this kind of command and control actually turns out to be a boomerang, because if you give an instruction, well, you have to confirm that it was done properly. Okay? And if somebody says, oh, wait a minute, you told us to go to take this bridge. Well, we can't get to this bridge, so what are we supposed to do? Okay? If all of these things have to go back to the manager, all of a sudden that manager is a bottleneck. And if the manager has got multiple teams, then the manager has got 5 teams all asking him for decisions, and he has no time to think about it. Okay? So it turns them into a bottleneck, and it limits their bandwidth. Okay? So it also risks turning into micromanagement, which at the same time is very ineffective and leaves no room for growth. So what are the alternatives? Well, let's start talking about how could we, what are better forms of leadership? So we said command and control works for simple tasks. What do you do for complex tasks? And nobody thinks about this more than the military, or at least the American military. And they have evolved an alternative which they call mission command. Now, the idea behind mission command is you don't just say, take the bridge. You say, well, this is why we want to take the bridge. So we have an overall goal, and taking the bridge is going to support the goal. And so the whole team is briefed on what they're trying to do, why they're trying to do it, what the issues are, et cetera. They get to ask questions. They're also authorized, well, what do you do if you can't take the bridge? Well, do the next best thing. What if you have a better alternative? Go for it. And if they need help, they can call for help, and they can get air support or artillery support or whatever it is that they need, which greatly enables their ability to deal with the unexpected. Okay? So this is called mission command. In personal agility, we call this command intent, what really matters. So we get clarity on what really matters, and that makes it possible for us to think independently, for us to act collectively. Okay? Now, we see these patterns in Scrum. Scrum talks about the sprint goal. What are we trying to achieve this sprint? And we talk about the product goal. What is the overall goal that we want to achieve with our product development? Okay? And so the sprint goal is designed to be the best step forward to reach the product goal. And what this does is it enables the flock, so to speak, to stay together. Okay? Now, this puts a couple of demands both on our leadership and on the team members within the teams. The leadership needs to be able to think strategically. They need to be able to communicate what the overall goal is. They need to be able to communicate what the intermediate goal is and how the intermediate goal is going to support the overall goal. Okay? And leadership within the team is about the sense of responsibility to stand up and do the right thing when that's called for. To be able to ask the questions, to be able to see the big picture so you can do the right thing. Okay, I see I've hit my time box. Can I get 5 minutes of overtime? Okay, maybe I should ask, can I have 5 minutes of overtime? Okay, so when we look at real agile transformations, one of the objections that we see coming up is that leaders say, but my people can't do that. They're not mature enough. They need new software. They need to reboot their brains. No, this isn't going to work. And one of the frustrations is for the agile coaches saying, well, have you noticed how we've got a chicken and egg problem here? How you're actually causing the problem you're complaining about? No, this isn't happening. But I think what's really happening is we have what I call the knowledge problem. Okay, and so we've got a state called high knowledge. Okay, leaders are expected to have high knowledge. They're expected to be the source of the solution because they understand the problem. They're expected to care about the overall result, and they're mostly trusted. And I say mostly because that command and control thing is hierarchical all the way to the top. Okay? What's the opposite of knowledge? You know, and there aren't any nice words here. I say ignorance. Wow, God, I'm ignorant. Well, let's call it innocence. Okay? And maybe the fear is that they're apathetic, that the person who we're talking about doesn't care. Now, when we say leadership, okay, the leaders tell people what to do, right? That's what commanders do, okay? And so we expect to find our commanders up here in the upper right-hand corner. So if our commanders are in the upper right-hand corner, where are our doers? Where are the followers? Well, first of all, if they're not telling, they're obviously listening, right? Hopefully. Maybe, maybe not. God, these guys never listen. How come these guys never listen to me? I don't know. So anyway, we expect them to somehow be down here. Now, by the way, this picture was inspired by David Marquet from Turn the Boat Around. And he went into a situation where he was in a position where he was expected to be the guy up here, but actually he was down here. Okay, now what happens if you have someone who's telling, who doesn't know what's going on? Yeah. Very good results, yes. Okay, so let's see if we can reframe this problem a bit. If instead of being expected to listen, what if we were expected to ask? Okay, how do you learn? How do you get from the state of ignorance to the state of knowledge? Well, we ask questions. Okay, a scientist would say we run experiments. Science says we start from a position of ignorance and we strive to achieve a position of knowledge. This actually suggests a growth path. Okay, what we expect is for people to ask questions. And this enables them to develop their knowledge, but it also enables them to see the big picture so that they can care about the overall results. And it also creates empathy because we're having dialogue between the leaders and I'll call them the team leaders, the individual leaders. Okay? So we can actually build the trust and the empathy necessary to do delegation. Now, how do we solve the multitasking problem? Okay? And this is an area where the Agile movement has been really good. It's real simple. Cadence and tangible results. So, you know, Walter, after his 2-year failure, or 2-year attempt to save his company with traditional means, he switched to an Agile approach. And the main difference between the first approach and the Agile approach was that he worked in iterations. I call this cadence. Okay? They basically said every 3 weeks, they're going to review what they've accomplished, they're going to set tangible goals, they're going to be clear on what they want to accomplish, and they're going to focus on things that they can accomplish in that time period. So they dramatically limited the work in progress. And what happened? Okay, there are your 3-week sprints, and those are the things. Now, by the way, that's to scale, okay, in terms of the time passing. So in a quarter of the time, they achieved all the results. Okay, Jeff Sutherland, you know, with his book, Twice the Work in Half the Time, he got the proportions right, but I think he picked the wrong targets. It's not twice the work in half the time. It's all the results with half the work in a quarter of the time. Okay? So, how do you get started? Well, you remember I said you are who you are because you do what you do? Well, it's really easy to start being agile, even as a leader. Okay? What you do is you start collaborating with other people in your position, discuss your challenges, identify causes, look for solutions. Okay? Do that in cadence, once a month, maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks, and look for better ways. Okay? And it turns out when you start doing that, you've already taken the first step to being agile. Okay? That first sentence agility that we talk about. So the easiest place to start any change is with yourself. So I'd recommend a couple of things. The first is change is easy if you want to do it. So if you say, hey, I want to do this, then all of a sudden it's much easier. I suppose you could do disagree and commit, but I'm not really sure how fun that would be. But you know, if you want to do it, it's fairly easy. The other thing is, if you want to dance, step number 1, start dancing. If you want someone else to dance, well, start dancing and then invite them to dance with you. Go dance, guys. That just doesn't work very well. And so you invite other people to do the same. Now, Personal agility has got a lot of stuff. You can also do this with personal Kanban, although my humble opinion is personal agility is an upgrade. But start with something for yourself so you start using agility to manage, call it the cracks between the projects at work, okay? Everything that your company does is somehow managed by the company, but what about your own time, okay? Use that to manage your own time. What this does is this lets you gain authentic experience, so you can show other people, so you can apply agility and still be a leader. Share your approach with those around you, and then cultivate that in your organization. Okay? Couple of things, strategic thinking is going to be really helpful. Cadence and tangible results. Ask before you tell. Okay, so I'd like to close out with one last slide. Summary, what you need to take home. First of all, the world is a complex place. Our leaders have a big challenge. Okay? They got a lot of things that they got to do to keep the company afloat. What are the challenges? What are the issues internally that we need to address? Well, one is alignment, one is the knowledge problem, the multitasking problem, and finding better ways of leading our company. I believe that agile skills are tremendously useful as leadership skills, and they enable this to work up and down the organization. If you have clarity of purpose, celebrate and choose what you're doing. Do this in cadence and have dialogue with yourself and the people around you. These enable leadership to emerge, okay? And what you're going to get is empathy and alignment, okay? And these things will enable your organization to be decisive and to hold its focus long enough to achieve its goals. So with that, I want to thank you for the overtime and thank you for your attention. The closing ceremony is waiting and the networking are waiting for you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. And everyone, we're open for questions. All right.
Could you please formulate or describe what exactly it is the agile in one sentence?
What is agility in one sentence? Oh.
Just because it's verbal, we don't know where the sentence ends.
You know, one of the nice things, if you use a transcription program, okay, agility. For me, agility, well, for me it's those three words: learning, collaboration, and purpose, okay, and being systematic about it, okay? The other thing I would say, agility is hope. There is a better way, and you can find that better way. And even if the person at the other side of the table is not as interested in the better way as you are, you can convince him, maybe not this time, but next time. So I've actually, that slide, agility is hope, that's something that came to me really today because the testimonial that I showed there that arrived on LinkedIn totally unrequested from someone who learned Scrum from me 15 years ago. Okay, and he's still finding that agility is helping him improve his life. Okay, so I think that there's really, you know, if you want it, my one-word sentence, agility is hope, and we get it through learning, collaboration, and finding our purpose.
More questions?
God, I hope somebody wrote that down.
We do have one question online, right?
Yes, we have one question online, so I'm going to read it. What could stand in a way to achieve activating the full potential of yours?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What could stand in the way to achieve this, to achieve activating full potential of your?
What could stand in the way of activating your potential, your full potential? Well, actually, if you want to do it, only yourself. Okay? One of the things that, since I started coaching, especially personal agility, one of the things that I discovered is the biggest limiters of our potential is ourselves. And if you believe in yourself, then you can make it happen. One of the side effects, or one of the things that we do when we are not sure if we really want to do it, is called procrastination. Anyone familiar with procrastination? Anyone here a good procrastinator? You have got no idea what a good procrastinator I am, believe me, okay? So, now, I believe that procrastination is trying to tell you something, okay? And there are a lot of operational things, but I think the most important and the most fundamental is procrastination is about fear. What are you afraid of? Now, if you look at these discussions on LinkedIn, people are always saying, oh, you've got to get past the fear of failure. Okay? And yeah, you know, I don't disagree that fear of failure is a real thing. But I think there's something even scarier than failure, and that's success. Okay? If you fail, what happens? For most of us, failure doesn't really change anything. We have the same friends, we have the same hobbies, we have the same job, we have the same weight, we have the same, you know, the same friends, we smoke or we don't. You know, it doesn't make any difference. Okay? But what happens if you succeed? Okay? If you succeed at work, oh my God. Well, first thing, every success is an invitation to do more work, and it probably means more responsibility. Okay? If you have weight problems and lose 20 kilos, but none of your friends have lost 20 kilos, how are they going to feel about you? How are you going to feel about them, and will they still be your friends? What happens if you get that promotion and you earn 30% or 100% more money than you did last year? These things can be pretty scary, and sometimes people find ways to sabotage themselves. So, you know, to come back to your question, you know, what are the ways of slowing it down? People have done amazing things just because they believe they can do it, and so many people have not done anything at all because they've convinced themselves, or they hear a voice in the back of their head saying, no, 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 you can't do this. So put that voice behind you and just say, do I want to do this? Yeah, I do. Let's go for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
On behalf of the team, a small gift for you. As a
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, folks. So this was the closing event, closing the keynote. It was really awesome to see so many people in person, and I guess that each of you have met someone you haven't met for a while, which again, another great advantage of a conference like this. I have met colleagues I haven't seen for a while, so for me it was very exciting to do so, even though I was a bit busy. So if you think that you still have a lot of things to digest after such a lot of knowledge sessions, you're wrong, because we still have a lot of food in our networking event. And what is also great, that our speakers will be there, participants will be there, organizers will be there. So let's continue our discussions and our today's journey in the networking event. Just after we give away some prizes for those who were the most active ones throughout the day. We have prizes for the photo contest, we have prizes for the feedback. So, without further ado, by the way, if you don't think you're going to win, I mean, you can just go enjoy the wine, be the first one, grab the snack. But please, when you leave silently, okay? So, let's go with the first prizes. The prizes for the feedback that was received during the workshops using our experimental startup hamster event. And there will be an branded Agile Lithuania water bottle. Okay? And we're going to be a draw. I don't know who's receiving the bottle. Not yet? Okay, let's go with the next. Blanket, Agile Lithuania merchandise, blanket for the feedback. We need 3 minutes. That's an order from the president. Executive order, yes. Meanwhile, I have again to thank everyone who made this event happen. Our partners, Agile Coach, Oboard, Telesoftas, Present Connection, Accenture, our partners Voltas IT, and Omnisend. Our media partner, Dave Agency. Am I too fast? I'm not going to take 3 minutes. Our friends Ibis Hotel, Comfort Hotel, and O'Reilly, who are providing a bunch of amazing books. Unfortunately, we don't have Team Topologies book among them, but I think you got so curious about the book that you're gonna just buy it, and either in audio format or in a physical one, whatever you prefer. We have a bunch of social partners this year. Among them, we have Project Management United. They are also organizing really awesome conferences, at least once a year, at minimum. We have partners Agile and Agile Sophos, who are having regular podcasts and interviews with Agile professionals. Very interesting content. We have PMI Lithuania. We have Lithuanian Project Management Association, AIMPM, sorry, and Infobalt, as usual. And Mr. President, are we ready with the prizes? Oh yeah, let's go with the photo contest, correct. Okay, so, okay, well, someone deleted the data, so I'm just gonna use the backup. So, photo contest. So, let's go. Karolis Norika, 56 likes. I don't know, LinkedIn or Facebook, doesn't matter. You're the winner. Do we have Karolis? Yes. Diana, what is the prize? Is this book? Yes, you are the winner. Here you are.
Thank you.
For the photo contest, are you sure?
Yes. Yes.
Just take it. Do we have also Artur Margonari? All right, we'll catch him later. And I know Gražvydas Šedys left already, so congrats to him for 28 votes. He is also a winner. And of course, the biggest winner is Diana, because she collected 95 likes on the social media. And we have, just because we are audited by Grantor, forgot the name of the company, but there is definitely no public and private conflict here. Okay. All right. So we are ready. So for the feedback, we have a blanket, and the winner is? This is the randomizer, very comprehensive software. Agnese? Yes. Probably drinking wine already. Then the second one, have no clue, Toma something. Maybe we have Elizaveta. You sure? You have ID? You have ID? Just kidding, come on. All right, come on. Get your prize. It's blanket. Unfortunately, my protocol doesn't say you get a book, it says you get blanket. I cannot be agile. I'm purely waterfall. Okay. We have another bundle prize for the feedback. Oh, the value. You know, many speakers today spoke to the fact that the most important thing to do is to deliver value. That's true. Jurgitux. Jurgita. Jurgitux. Jurgita. Jurgita. Jurgita Jurg. Jurgelevichux. No? Oh man. Can we just go drink wine? No, seriously, can we go drink wine?
And what about prizes?
We know the winners are just on the list, so we go drink wine and we give away the prizes. Figure.